Hey everyone, and big howdy to LitRPG Reads, and that fine fellow Paul Bello for the inspiration behind today's deep dive. We're strapped in on our boots and six-shooters, because we're diving headfirst into the world of Wild West D&D.
Sounds fun.
This whole idea really takes me back to a game I played a while ago. Picture this. We're in the middle of a tense dungeon crawl. Torches, flickering the smell of stale air. And well, let's just say things were getting pretty dicey. Suddenly, our barbarian, in all his raging glory, decides to pull out a frickin' revolver he'd liberated from a previous encounter.
Oh, no.
It was like watching John Wayne wander into a Tolkien novel.
Oh, hilarious.
The whole table erupted in laughter. It completely broke the immersion, but it also sparked a really interesting conversation. Could we actually make a Wild West campaign work in D&D? Well, that's exactly what this LitRPG Reads article tackles. And let me tell you, it's packed with ideas. First things first, setting the scene. The article really stresses how important it is to create a vivid, immersive atmosphere. I think that's key for any D&D campaign, right? But it takes on a whole new dimension when you're talking about the Wild West. We're not talking about your typical forests and caves. We're talking about vast, sun-baked deserts stretching as far as the eye can see, bustling boom towns teeming with prospectors and gunslingers, and maybe even a hidden canyon leading to an outlaw hideout.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about painting a picture so vivid that your players can practically taste the dust in the air and feel the grit between their teeth. The article suggests using a variety of tools to achieve this. Music is a powerful one. Imagine the sound of a twangy banjo filling the room as your players step into a dusty saloon, or the mournful wail of a harmonica echoing across a desolate plain.
Yeah, I can practically hear it now.
And don't underestimate the power of props. Handing your players a weathered wanted poster or a leather-bound journal, something they can physically interact with, can really ground them in the world. It's all about engaging the senses and making the setting feel real.
I love that idea. It's like you're giving them a piece of the Wild West to hold in their hands.
Exactly. And speaking of making things feel real, the article dives into specific locations. That can bring your Wild West campaign to life. We're talking scorching canyons where the heat itself becomes a challenge, treacherous swamplands teeming with strange creatures, and abandoned mines that whisper tales of lost fortunes and forgotten dangers.
Now you're speaking my language. These aren't just locations. They're opportunities for adventure. Think about it. A canyon isn't just a pretty backdrop. The narrow passages could create a fantastic opportunity for an ambush, forcing the players to think tactically about their positioning. Or maybe a flash flood suddenly turns that canyon into a raging torrent, adding a whole new level of danger and excitement to the encounter.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
And those abandoned mines. Forget goblins and kobolds. We're talking about the spirits of greedy prospectors, driven mad by their lust for gold guarding their claims for eternity. You can even throw in a few booby traps, left behind by some long-forgotten prospector, just to keep things interesting. But it's not all about wide-open spaces and ghost towns, right? The article also talks about the importance of bustling towns and outposts as hubs of activity. What do you think makes these locations so crucial to the Wild West setting?
Think of these towns as microcosms of the Wild West, reflecting all its vibrancy, its lawlessness, and its contradictions, really. You have the saloons where rumors are traded over whiskey and a good game of cards, the general stores packed with everything from snake oil to mining supplies, where you can find just about anything if you know the right people. And of course, the ever-present sheriff's office, a beacon of law and order, or at least attempting to be, in a town brimming with gunslingers and drifters with their own agendas.
Yeah, those sheriff's offices are always interesting places, especially in a town where everyone's packing heat.
Right. Each location is a stage for potential encounters, for role-playing opportunities. Maybe the players need information, and the only person who knows it is a grizzled old bartender with a penchant for tall tales and a weakness for gambling.
I can picture him now.
Or perhaps they need to acquire a rare item. But the shopkeeper is a shrewd businessman who won't part with it easily.
Sound like a challenge.
These towns are where the players can interact with the Wild West on a personal level, where they can delve into the lives of its inhabitants and uncover the stories that breathe life into this world. And speaking of breathing life into the world, let's talk about NPCs.
Yeah, NPCs. They're the heart and soul of any good campaign. And in the Wild West, they can be as diverse and unpredictable as the landscape itself. You could have your classic archetypes, the sharpshooting gunslinger with a mysterious past, a charismatic but ruthless outlaw leader, a grizzled old sheriff who's seen it all and is just trying to hold on to what little piece he can do.
Classic Western tropes.
But the article goes beyond the archetypes and encourages us to delve deeper. It argues that in the Wild West, the line between hero and villain isn't always so clear. A seemingly righteous lawman might be in the pocket of a corrupt cattle baron. A charming gambler could be hiding a deadly secret. I love that idea. It really adds a layer of complexity and intrigue to the campaign. What are your thoughts?
I think the article nails it there. It's about creating NPCs with depth, with conflicting motivations and hidden agendas. It's about asking yourself, what drives this character? Is it greed? Revenge? A longing for something they've lost? And how do those desires shape their actions and their interactions with the players?
Right, it's about giving them a reason to be in the story.
Exactly. Imagine a gunslinger haunted by a past they're trying to escape. Maybe they're incredibly skilled, but also reckless and prone to violence. Are they an ally or a threat? The answer might not be so simple, and that's what makes them compelling.
It's like a walking moral dilemma.
And when you weave these complex characters into the fabric of the campaign, they become more than just quest givers or obstacles. They become part of the story with their own goals and motivations, which may align with or conflict with the player's own, leading to some truly memorable interactions.
Absolutely. It's about creating a world that feels alive, where the NPCs have their own stories to tell and their own parts to play in the unfolding drama. Speaking of drama, the article suggests weaving classic Western conflicts into your D&D game. Land disputes, gold rush frenzy, maybe even a good old-fashioned showdown between a lone lawman and a gang of outlaws.
Oh yeah, the classic Western tropes.
It seems like a great way to tap into those iconic Wild West themes and create opportunities for epic encounters. What are some of the conflicts that you think would translate particularly well to a D&D campaign?
The beauty of it is that so many of these classic conflicts can be easily adapted to a D&D setting, creating opportunities for role-playing combat and exploration. Take land disputes, for example. Imagine a group of settlers encroaching on Native American lands, or a powerful rancher trying to drive homesteaders off their claims.
Oh, that's a good one.
This immediately creates moral dilemmas for the players. Do they side with the settlers even if it means displacing the indigenous population? Do they uphold the law even if the law is unjust?
Tough choices.
And then there's the gold rush, a classic tale of greed and ambition. Imagine a boomtown overrun with prospectors all vying for a piece of the pie. The players could get caught in the middle of rival gangs fighting for control of the mines. Or maybe they stumble upon a lost treasure map, leading them on a dangerous quest for fortune and glory. The possibilities are endless.
Now that's what I'm talking about. I can already see it, a dusty map clutched in a trembling hand, leading the players through treacherous mountains and forgotten ruins, each step bringing them closer to the legendary lost mine of El Dorado. It's the stuff of legends.
Pure Western gold.
But of course, we can't talk about the Wild West without talking about the iconic weapons. I mean, what's a Wild West campaign without a few six-shooters and lever-action rifles? And the article doesn't disappoint. It dives into all sorts of firearms you can introduce: revolvers, rifles, shotguns, even those pocket-sized derringers.
Gotta love a good derringer.
But now we're venturing into tricky territory. How do you balance firearms in a world that also has magic and monsters? We don't want to turn D&D into a straight-up Western simulator, right? What are your thoughts on integrating these elements without disrupting the core mechanics of the game?
That's the challenge, isn't it? Finding that sweet spot where firearms add a new dimension to combat without completely overshadowing traditional D&D elements. The article suggests a few approaches. One is to think of firearms as tools, not replacements for swords and spells. They have their advantages, range, stopping power, but also their limitations.
I see where you're going with this.
Ammunition is a finite resource. Reloading takes precious time, especially in the heat of battle. And let's not forget, a well-placed spell or a charging barbarian can still be devastating, even in a world of gunslingers.
Right, it's about maintaining that balance.
The key is to create scenarios where both traditional combat and firearms have their place. Maybe a wide-open desert plain favors ranged combat, but a close-quarters saloon brawl might give the edge to a skilled swordsman or a nimble rogue.
I like that approach. It keeps things interesting, forces players to think strategically about their choices, and prevents any one combat style from becoming too dominant. And, when you start thinking about firearms, it's just another tool in the D&D toolbox. It opens up some really cool possibilities.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What if a clever artificer starts tinkering with those firearms, adding magical enhancements or crafting bullets imbued with elemental power? Imagine a revolver that shoots fireballs, or a rifle that can freeze an enemy in their tracks.
Now that's an interesting twist.
Suddenly you've got this amazing blend of technology and magic that feels both familiar and excitingly new.
Yeah, it's like taking the best of both worlds.
It's like taking the classic Western tropes and injecting them with a dose of pure D&D weirdness, and that's what I love about this whole concept. It's about taking something familiar and twisting it just enough to make it feel fresh and unexpected.
Exactly. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in a D&D game. We're so accustomed to Dungeons and Dragons. But the frontier offers a whole new playground for adventure. And speaking of pushing boundaries, the article also explores the question of magic. In a Wild West setting,
No, it's a tricky one.
it's a delicate balance. How do you incorporate mystical elements without making it feel like a generic fantasy world with cowboy hats?
Right. You don't want to lose that grounded, gritty feel
Yeah.
that's so essential to the Wild West. The magic needs to feel authentic to the setting.
The article suggests leaning into illusions that mimic natural phenomena. Imagine a spellcaster conjuring a mirage in the desert, leading travelers astray, or concealing a hidden oasis. Or perhaps they summon a dust storm to obscure the battlefield, giving their allies an advantage in a shootout.
I love that. It's subtle, but effective. And it plays into the myths and legends of the Wild West. And, thinking about myths and legends, what about incorporating some of those classic Wild West tales into the campaign? Haunted mines, ghostly riders, maybe even encounters with powerful spirits or tribal totems.
Those are fantastic ideas. The article emphasizes embracing those elements of folklore and legend that add a touch of mystery and the supernatural to the setting. It's about capturing that sense of awe and wonder that the Wild West evokes, that feeling that anything is possible, that there's still secrets to be uncovered in this vast and untamed land.
I like it. It's like you're adding another layer of depth to the setting.
And it ties into another crucial aspect of any successful campaign: player motivation. Why are these adventurers venturing into the Wild West? What are their personal stakes in the game?
It's a question we should always ask ourselves, no matter what kind of campaign we're running, because even the most thrilling encounters fall flat if the players don't have a reason to care. So how do we apply that to a Wild West setting?
Think about the classic Western archetypes. The gunslinger seeking revenge for a past wrong, the prospector driven by a thirst for gold and glory, the lawman determined to bring justice to a lawless land. Each of these archetypes comes with built-in motivations, but it's about digging deeper, personalizing those motivations for each player's character.
Makes sense.
Maybe their quest for revenge is intertwined with a tragic love story, or their desire for wealth masks a deeper longing for family and belonging.
Oh, that's a good one.
And let's not forget the power of redemption arcs. Imagine a former outlaw trying to atone for their past crimes, or a gunslinger haunted by the ghosts of those they've killed, seeking a chance to make things right.
Redemption arcs are always so compelling. They tap into something universal, that desire for second chances, for forgiveness, for the possibility of change. And they can add a powerful emotional layer to the campaign. But, we've talked a lot about setting characters and conflicts. But I think one of the biggest challenges of running a Wild West D&G campaign is maintaining that authentic feel throughout the game.
You're not wrong about that.
It's about more than just the location and the costumes. It's about the tone, the dialogue, the way the players and the DM interact. It's about creating an immersive experience that truly transports everyone to the world of the Wild West.
You're absolutely right. It's about sweating the details. The article suggests embracing period-appropriate language. Think about the way characters spoke in classic Westerns. It was direct, often laconic, with a touch of dry wit. Encourage your players to adopt that style of speech, to avoid modern slang and references that would feel out of place in a historical setting.
It's like stepping back in time, not just in terms of the setting, but also the way people talk.
Exactly.
And don't underestimate the power of music.
The right soundtrack can instantly transport your players to a dusty saloon or a desolate canyon. Think twangy banjos, mournful harmonicas, and maybe even some epic Ennio Morricone-inspired scores for those big showdown moments.
Oh yeah, the music is crucial. It's like setting the stage for the drama to unfold. And what about the visual elements? I'm talking about maps, illustrations, even props that the players can interact with. How can we use those to enhance the immersive experience?
Visuals are key. A detailed map of a boomtown complete with saloons, general stores. And the sheriff's office can really bring the setting to life.
Yeah, I love a good map.
And don't be afraid to get creative with props. A deck of weathered playing cards, a set of antique dice, even a replica of a wanted poster can add a tactile dimension to the game.
It's all about those little details.
And then there's lighting. Think about those classic Western shots. Silhouettes against a setting sun, flickering lanterns in a dark saloon, the glint of sunlight off a sheriff's badge. These are all elements you can incorporate into your game, using candles, lanterns, and other lighting techniques to create a truly cinematic atmosphere.
I love that. It's all about creating that sense of place, that feeling that you've stepped into a different world. And you know, it's funny, we started this conversation talking about how to balance firearms in a D&D setting. But we've really come full circle.
Yeah, we have.
It's not just about the mechanics, it's about creating a holistic experience that captures the essence of the Wild West. And I think that's what makes this concept so exciting. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to really push the boundaries of what's possible in a D&D game.
I couldn't agree more. It's about taking those classic Western tropes and blending them with the magic and wonder of D&D, creating something truly unique and unforgettable.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more point the article mentions. Avoiding anachronisms. It seems like a no-brainer, but it's easy to slip up. What are some of the common pitfalls we should be aware of? And how can we ensure that our Wild West campaign feels authentic to the time period?
Anachronisms are sneaky little things, aren't they? They can slip in unnoticed, and suddenly you've got a character quoting a modern meme in the middle of a saloon brawl, shattering the illusion you've worked so hard to create.
Yeah, that would definitely break the immersion.
The article highlights some key areas to watch out for. Language is a big one. Encourage your players to think about how people spoke in the Wild West. It was a different time with a different vocabulary and a different way of expressing themselves.
Right, it was a much more formal time.
Avoid modern slang pop culture references and anything that would sound jarringly out of place in a historical setting.
So basically keep it clean and classic.
Exactly.
It's about setting those ground rules early on, right?
Yeah.
Making sure everyone is on the same page and understands the importance of maintaining that authentic feel.
Yeah, definitely.
You could even turn it into a fun challenge. Encourage your players to come up with creative ways to express themselves using period-appropriate language.
No, that's a good idea.
It could lead to some hilarious role-playing moments.
I can imagine that.
Imagine a player trying to explain the concept of the internet to an NPC who's never even seen a telegraph. The sheer confusion and bewilderment would be priceless.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not just about avoiding what's out of place, but also embracing the language of the time period.
Exactly. It's about embracing the limitations of the setting and using them to your advantage.
And it's not just about language. Technology is another area where anachronisms can creep in.
Right. You don't want to see a character pull out a smartphone in the middle of a gunfight.
Definitely not.
Resist the temptation to introduce gadgets and inventions that wouldn't have existed in the Wild West. No smartphones, no laptops, no time travel. Keep the technology grounded in the reality of the time period.
It's about keeping it real.
Yeah.
Or at least as real as a fantasy world can be.
Exactly.
And, you know, that might seem limiting at first.
Mhm.
But I think it actually forces you to be more creative. How do you solve a problem or overcome an obstacle when you don't have access to modern technology?
It's a good challenge for the players.
It requires you to think outside the box, to rely on ingenuity and resourcefulness.
Yeah.
And that can lead to some truly memorable moments in the game.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the constraints of the setting and using them to fuel your creativity. And I think that's a valuable lesson for any kind of storytelling, whether it's D&D or any other form of creative expression.
Well said. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Wild West, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've talked about setting the scene, creating compelling characters, and wedging in classic Western conflicts. But ultimately, it's up to you, the players, and the Dungeon Master, to bring this world to life. It's your imagination, your creativity, and your passion for storytelling. That will make this campaign truly special. So I want to pose a question to all of you out there in listener land. What's the most exciting Wild West-themed encounter you can imagine for a D&D game? Head over to the comments and let us know. We can't wait to hear your ideas. And a big thanks again to that fine fellow Paul Bello and LitRPG Reads for inspiring this deep dive. Until next time, happy trails.